So Julie, thank you very much for joining us to our studio. It's been great to have you as a moderator at Astana International Forum. So what are your impressions? How revealing were the answers of the today's leaders here?
Well, it's an honor to be here, and it's my first time in Astana. I loved it. I think that, as I said in the introduction, I think it's a global conversation. It was brilliant to have representation from the United Nations sort of Food and Agricultural Organization. Then you have a president of an African nation, your own president, and everybody had the same message, I think, which is we know there's challenges out there, but we have to be optimistic about what we can do. And we need to be more united in addressing some of the biggest challenges out there, whether it's climate change or the impact of AI. So I was a little daunted because we are in a deeply fragmented moment in time, but it was great to see good leadership and people on stage saying, hey, you know, let's take action.
Yeah, I think the audience was quite also interacting and engaging with you, as well as the answers of the leaders were quite really.
Absolutely. The president of North Macedonia suggesting that we need a female head of
UN Secretary General, right?
Exactly. And the whole audience, surprise, surprise, agreed that we need some female leadership. And to her point, it's not about replacing men, but it's just, I think, about a different approach to leadership.
Right.
And I sort of agree.
Yeah,
my experience.
You asked a question about what is actually feminism in politics.
Right.
What is feminine for you in journalism? How do you see it?
That's a great question. And I would answer the same way. It's not about replacing men. It's just doing things a little bit differently, whether it's a bit of charm, whether it's about asking tough questions with a smile.
Yeah.
To me, that's adding a touch of feminism to, you know, a profession that goes for all.
What about the difference of preparation perhaps for this particular forum? How long have you been preparing? And what's specific of this forum, do you think? Because I know that you've been a moderator at many forums worldwide.
Well, jet lag is one feature of flying from New York to Kazakhstan. But in all seriousness, I think that anyone who's ever worked with me will tell you that I totally over-prep for every interview and every occasion. But I think I owe that to the platform, to the organization, and to the people that I'm interviewing or moderating with, because I want to bring out the best in them. I want to challenge them. I want them to perhaps think about things differently. And again, I think you saw that. I would say that perhaps what's a little bit unique to me, I'm a good listener and I try and use humor because we are in a challenging moment, and sometimes tough questions and tough answers are difficult even for leaders to say, and people are angry in the world. If you can inject a little bit of humor
and tone,
then sometimes you get the answers that you're looking for.
What about the atmosphere in general at this forum? Because all forums are different. For example, if we take the forum that you moderated last year in Doha. So the audience as well as the participants perhaps are different. And how about this one? What would you highlight on?
Yeah, I think it's a different part of the world. And I think when you're European or you're British living in America, you forget that this side of the world is vast.
Yeah.
But there's very different cultures and a very different feel. I've always found the Kazakhs as a people incredibly warm, incredibly engaging. And even if they say little, they see everything. And there's a twinkle in the eye. So I love, and I'm very happy to be here. And for me, this forum, again, to the point I just made, feels global in an important way and an important time. And it's nice to get the perspective of this side of the world, particularly about reforming institutions like the UN.
Right.
When you have all that experience in the room and they're all saying, look, it needs to work better. And hopefully, if it can work better, then the world will be a more peaceful place.
And also how it can work better, because everybody's saying that, but what's mechanism are actually?
Well, you heard a number of the two presidents there and other voices saying an expansion of the Security Council, that what the Security Council represents today should not be how it was built in the past. And hopefully then we won't have this continual deadlock.
Yeah.
I hope we can agree to evolve and see the United Nations evolve, because what other body, if not that, can help address some of the conflict and the crisis in the world? So my hope is that we get to a point where we can have a body that was built at a very important time rise to the challenge of the crises that we face today.
Yeah. And let me also brush up the forum in Doha where our president, Tokayev, was also giving an interview. And I think you opened him and his position of the country as well at that interview. What do you remember from that interview and how revealing were the answers of our leader?
I remember it vividly because I talked to him about the fact that Kazakhstan is an enormous country that faces the opportunity and the challenge of requiring investment from nations like Russia, wanting engagement and foreign direct investment from nations like the United States. And as we see at this moment in time, we're talking about two nations that are diametrically opposed in many respects, not to mention other nations too. We talked about those challenges. We talked about the opportunities. He doesn't shy away from addressing whether it's domestic challenges, and every leader faces that. Everybody's dealing with the high cost of living, with wanting opportunity, with job assurances for the future. So I don't think he just shies away from talking about the challenges. But he'd also just met Donald Trump at that moment. And we didn't know what to expect at that moment.
At the very beginning.
Even our wildest imaginations perhaps have been beaten by what we've seen in the last 5 months. Not easy for a leader, but hey, you're elected to do a job when you do it.
To sum up, Julie, since you are my colleague, how do you see the future of journalism, especially traditional, perhaps, journalism that we work for?
That's a great question. And I think the challenge that journalism faces at this moment is that we're in a period of time, at least in my view, where truth matters less than trust and authenticity. And you see that in certain elected leaders. You may love them, you may hate them, but they're authentic and you know what you're getting. And I think journalists owe it to the public to be truthful in what they say, but not add a slant or a bias. As if the speakers are their clients or someone else. Absolutely. And I think the business model is difficult too, because when you rely on advertisers and you rely on clicks, for example.
Or you're following the interests only of the viewers.
Then it's
some principles that must be standard, not changeable.
So you don't need me to answer that question. You can answer it for yourself. So, you know, it again, to the conversation we just had, it's an opportunity and it's a challenge. And I think everybody's trying to work out how best to serve the people. And I think, at least for me, that was why I became a journalist. And if you can always look at yourself in the mirror in the morning and say, am I best serving the people, whether you're a journalist or a leader, in fact, then you can sleep more easily at night. And I think it should be keeping some of us awake.
And the very last question, Julia, how do you think, how difficult it is or easy it is to work as a journalist in the United States nowadays?
I think, I guess it depends on your politics. I guess it depends if, again, you can hold the center line. You can speak truth to power. You can be on one political spectrum when you're speaking to someone on the other side of the political spectrum, and vice versa, you know? I think that's our job as journalists.
But is there any trend that you could notice during the Donald Trump's second term, perhaps in journalism?
Media's always been polarized, hasn't it? And we see that all over the world. So I could point to Donald Trump as a symptom of something else that's going on in society and politics, but I don't think I need to. I think there's enough division in the world. The danger for journalism is it exacerbates it, or it tries to address it and help with it. And I think, again, as a journalist, you want to help the public understand what's going on. You have to trust them to be able to interpret what's going on and not tell them what to think. It's a big responsibility, as you well know.
Thank you.
I don't have all the answers. I try. And I think the most important thing is stay humble, because I think the world has a way of humbling you if you don't. That's my motto.
Thank you very much for joining us and for your time.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
You got the dress code, by the way. Ladies in red.
Thank you.